So you want to play Arc Raiders. Look at you, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. You just finished your tutorial. You're ready to go into the Rust Belt and beyond to earn sexy loot. But before we can even begin any of that, we need to understand what it is we're actually trying to earn. Just like every other extraction shooter that has ever existed and will ever exist, the gameplay loop is simple. You go in, you got a loadout, you kill bad guys, you potentially kill other players, you safely extract, and upon doing so, you have a number of items in front of you that at first glance looks a bit overwhelming, which takes us to our very first tip. Just like in every other game, rarity here is very similar. For instance, a common item is white, uncommon is green, blue is rare, epic is pink, and legendary is yellow. But then you also probably notice that each one of these items have these little icons in the corner. These icons indicate exactly what the item is for. For instance, if you see a wrench icon, that means that that item is a material or contains materials that you can recycle for crafting. Keys can be used to access areas with high loot and extract safely without alerting other players. This plus symbol means that these items are consumables, and they can do things like replenish health, stamina, or even your shield. Items with the jewel icon can only be sold for coins, but you can also use them for random upgrades. And again, coin is essential if you want to buy an item from one of the vendors back home in Speranza. Now this takes us to the vendors themselves. Each of these vendors will carry different wares, and they'll also task you to complete quests, which usually require you to scavenge some sort of material or item. And after completing these quests, you'll then level up your vendors, who will now have the ability to sell you better items. So depending on your quests and depending on what you need to craft, even common items could be your highest priority. Now you can also track craftable items in the workshop, which will help you find the resources you need to scavenge during a raid. Now in the process of grinding for materials, don't forget to check with Scrappy the Rooster, who periodically brings you extra materials, which may save you some time. Now looking ahead at the full release, in order to craft certain items, you'll need to make workbenches and even upgrade those workbenches to access higher tiers of gear. Now this leads us to some of the most valuable items, recipes. Essentially, all of the high-end gear in Arc Raiders requires a recipe to craft. We're talking weapons, tools, traps, shield components, etc. You'll need to find these recipes out in the wild, but thankfully, they're very easy to identify. Not only do they have this book icon, but in the playtest, they were all legendary rarities. So if you see one of these, immediately put it in your safe slot. They are vital for progression into the late game though. Now there's a plethora of other important items you should watch out for that are beyond the scope of this video, but a resource I highly recommend you utilize is ardp.app. This website contains all the recipes, all the items, and even many of the quests that players encountered in the previous playtests. Let's say you found a processor. Not only will this website tell you what recipes use this components, you can also see which items, once recycled, gives you processors, which is invaluable, considering you can't access this information while you're out in the wild. Now, fair warning, depending on what changes Embark has implemented since the last playtest, some of this information may be outdated. But even so, use this website, guys. We'll have it linked in the video description below. Which brings us to our next tip. Although the full game is expected to have 4 maps at launch, with the 5th arriving soon afterwards, for the server slam going on this weekend, the only map we're gonna have available is Damn Battlegrounds. Now keep in mind, all of the maps essentially function the same. When you view them, you'll notice a ton of things that are jumping out to you. On the left-hand side, you have your quests and any recipes you have tracked. On the right-hand side, there's the legend, showing you various waypoints such as cargo elevators, which are your extraction points, raider hatches, where you can extract if you have a specific key card. There's also arc probes at Barren Husk and field depots, as well as different types of loot such as nature, industrial, arc, etc. Now each location contains these different loot types you may need depending on what you're crafting back at home. In the center of the screen, you have your full map, with one of the most important pieces of information being your various extraction points, along with a timer beside them notating how long you have left until the extraction point closes. Now you may have also noticed that there are different buildings and areas highlighted with different colors. This actually indicates the loot or lack of in that area. For instance, white equals scarce loot, yellow equals decent loot, and red means abundant. Each of these points of interest contain more loot, but more loot also means more danger. More importantly, more arc robots that are going to be patrolling these areas, as well as other players who will also be scavenging for those high-end items. For example, this area here is Old Battleground, where loot is scarce, but the loot that is there should be arc-related components, compared to the red area here, which has abundant loot reputation and can contain multiple types of loot, such as nature, industrial, and security. So again, going to these areas with abundant loot is definitely going to give you your most bang for your buck, but it's substantially more risky. Bringing us to our next tip. Guys, let's talk about these loadouts. You see, you have 2 weapon slots, a slot for your armor, an augment slot, a backpack that can hold up to 10 items, items, 6 quick use slots, and multiple safe pocket slots. Now, we're not going to really dive into the individual weapons themselves because we don't really know everything that's available in the loot pool. Embark has already announced balancing changes to some weapon types, even based on the previous playtests. However, what you do need to know about all weapons is their ammo type. Just like in pretty much every other shooter, you have different ammo types for different weapons. And in this case, different ammo types are better in different scenarios. For example, light ammo is mainly used with SMGs and light handguns, which are useful against players in close quarters combat, but light ammo is weak against arc armor plating. You've got medium ammo, which you can use with assault and battle rifles, which is somewhat effective against arc armor as well as players. Then there's heavy ammo, which is what you use mainly for snipers and hand cannons. These are very effective against arc as well as player shields, especially in long range engagements. Now, all of these will be carried in stacks. And as you can see here, guys, for heavy ammo, you'll have less ammo per stack that you can carry. There's also shotgun ammo that is somewhat effective against arc armor. And then there's even an energy ammo type for the Qualizer beam rifle, which is extremely effective against arc armor plating and limps. Next, we have the armor slots. This is where you can equip different types of shields. Now, your base shield is going to be this light shield, and it gives you 50 shield charge and a 23% damage resist. Again, these values may be subject to change though in the server slam, so do keep that in mind. The next tier up though is medium shield, which gives you 80 shield charge and 45% damage mitigation. Now, keep in mind, there's some drawbacks. You also have 5% reduced movement speed. Then we have the heavy shield with 120 shield charge, 65% damage resist, but 15% reduced movement speed. Now, it has been mentioned that the heavy shield will be nerfed before launch since it was way too strong in previous playtests. Now, in order to equip any shield that is above light, this will require Raider augments. Now, there are several types of augments, and they offer a variety of benefits. They can increase your backpack slots, your weight limits, and they can allow you to equip better shields and the most valuable legendary augments. It can even increase your quick use and your safe pocket slots. Now, your light shield will be compatible with any augments, but medium shields are only compatible with Raider augments 2 and above, and your heavy shield is compatible with Raider augments 3 and above. Now, just like other extraction shooters, your backpack can be used to hold pretty much anything that you like. Your quick use slots, those can only be used to hold consumable items, such as shield recharges, grenades, and healing items like bandages. Now, the last section of your loadout is your safe pockets. This is what allows you to save items even if you die, which is very useful if you come across rare items like keys or blueprints. Now, most people are going to be using their own custom loadouts. However, there is a free loadout option that will give you randomized low-tier gear, which pretty much is meant for you if you've lost everything. And let me just say, man, I've been there multiple times. Extraction shooters giveth, and it can taketh away, man. Now, one of the biggest drawbacks, though, to the free loadout that you're given is that you do not have access to augments or the safe pocket. Granted, though, if you die, no big deal. You just get another free loadout. But at the same time, nothing will be saved. Now, during this particular Arc Raider server slam, we will have access to early and mid-tier equipment. But Embark did state that some gear will be locked until the launch of the game. Which brings us to our next step. While playing Arc Raiders, you're going to be leveling up and unlocking skill points, which can be used on the skill tree to upgrade your character. Now, there are 3 different skill trees and 45 total skills available to choose from. You have the conditioning tree, which focuses on stamina, strength, and overall endurance. The survival tree, which focuses on healing, crafting, and survival-focused skills. And then you have mobility, which enhances movement speed, climbing, dodging, and more. To give you a bit of a deeper understanding of each of these trees, for example, the conditioning tree, which focuses on that stamina, strength, and overall endurance, there's skills here like Youthful Lungs, which increases your max stamina, or Good as New, which increases stamina regeneration while under a healing effect, or Calming Stroll, where while walking, your stamina regenerates as if you're standing still. And let me just say, managing your stamina is vitally important in Arc Raiders. There's also a few offensive-related skills on this tree, such as Fly Swatter, which will allow a single melee attack to destroy tick, pop, wasp, or turrets, as well as Security Breach, which lets you breach security lockers. Now, looking more deeply at mobility, you've got skills like Nimble Climber, which allows you to climb and vault more quickly. Survivor Stamina, where when you're critically hurt, your stamina regenerates faster. And Carry the Momentum, where after a sprint dodge roll, sprinting does not consume stamina for a short time, which is a very nice upgrade there. Now, as far as the survival tree goes, which again leans into healing, crafting, and the survival focused skills, the main skills here include things like Looter's Instinct, where when searching a container, loot is revealed faster. You also have Unburdened Roll, which reads that if your shield breaks, your first dodge roll within a few seconds does not cost stamina. Suffer in Silence, where while you are critically hurt, your movement makes less noise. Minesweeper, which says that mines and explosive deployables can be diffused when in close proximity. And Back on Your Feet, where when you're critically hurt, your health regenerates into a certain limit. Now, it's also worth noting that there's several minor skills to invest in as you climb each tree, and most skills can be specced into up to 5 times, which you're going to need to do as the major skills require different amounts of points to be invested into that tree before they can be unlocked. I would say there's value to all skill trees, and you can see a bit of overlap here between all of them, which brings us to the next tip I want to talk about: sound and visual cues. Guys, there are a lot of sound and visual indicators throughout Arc Raiders, from spots you want to avoid, alarms that you can break, and even traps you can set to detect when enemy players are closing in on you. Let's start though with Arc, because these clankers have put a lot of security systems in place. One of the hardest installations to notice are these tiny cameras placed all over the map. When you walk in line of sight of these, they will trigger an alarm to go off that only stops if you leave or destroy the camera. Now, turrets are a bit easier to spot, but definitely more annoying unless you take them out. Not only do they sound an alarm, but they also shoot back, making even more noise. Other alarms like metal detectors, car alarms, these are all dead giveaways that a player is nearby, both for yourself and also for enemy players, which is why in many cases, you may not even want to destroy these security systems. It almost gives you a level of security knowing that maybe an enemy player could set one of these off, which is greatly beneficial for you, especially if you're focused on an objective. Arc probes will also be rigged with alarms. And anytime a player gets in a fight with a PvE combatant, they tend to make a lot of noise. Now, other areas of the environment also create a lot of noise. Flocks of birds will get spooked when you run past. Metal rafters inside of buildings are much louder than other surfaces. Breaching doors is extremely loud. And if a player is attempting to extract at an elevator, an alarm will sound before it even opens, allowing you to close in on a prime target who may have lots of loot. Now, if you want to stay silent and stealthy, you can walk slowly, you can crouch, you can avoid open spaces. But hell, come on, man. We Titan mains out here. You know we're going to charge right into it. But I will say, guys, just about every engagement you enter, whether against PvE combatants or PvP, it creates a lot of commotion. Now, I also want to mention that when you're engaging enemy players, when you shoot them, you'll notice that there are no hit markers. But instead, you'll see a bright flash on a successful hit if their shield is still up, and a sound cue once it's been depleted. And when you shoot a player with no shields, you'll see these small clouds of blood. But keep in mind, guys, once you've downed an enemy player, a flare will be launched from that raider's body, alerting anyone in the surrounding area. My suggestion, loot fast, man. Next tip, sometimes, guys, you need to run, like seriously. And I'm not talking about from enemy players. I'm talking about the PvE combatants. There are enemies in this game, especially early on, where you just cannot defeat. The Bastions, the Rocketeers, the Bisons. These are enemies that are extremely daunting, even with the team. And then you have the Queen. The Queen is almost impossible, even with a large group. There are just some combatants that are just not worth fighting unless you're absolutely strapped or you have a death wish. But I will mention that most of these combatants do have weak spots that you can target. But even with those weak spots, you gotta have the right gear, plenty of health, and plenty of ammo. These Arc show no mercy, and you're always at risk of getting third-party by actual players. And a prolonged engagement could even risk your entire run if you're short on time to extract. Now, each instance lasts for 30 minutes, but you're not guaranteed to load into the beginning of that instance. So you want to plan your engagements around that time, which is why sometimes, guys, it is worth just running and extracting. You don't want to get tied down in an engagement that you have no chance of even winning to just run out of time. And I know some other extraction shooters have some levels of forgiveness with this. For instance, things like Hunt Showdown. If you run out of time, so long as you're in the extraction already, you still have the opportunity to extract. That is not the case here with Arc Raiders. That timer runs out, you die. Entire map wiped. Now, I have no idea if the developers are going to change this process. Some people have even suggested that even if the timer does run out, then instead of immediately wiping you and your squad, the combatants just go crazy, which I kind of like the idea of that as well. Almost leans into the thought that maybe if you have like a fully loaded out squad and the best gear in the game, who knows? Maybe you can literally stay in that instance seemingly forever. Now, on the topic of dealing with incredibly difficult combatants, I do want to mention that Arc Raiders has proximity chats. Now, I know proximity chat is not necessarily necessarily revolutionary, but for some reason, in other shooters, proximity chat was not included. I would say proximity chat is going to be vitally important for arc raiders. If a queen is right there in front of you, look, man, I'm not saying you and your squad can't handle it. Maybe if you have the best gear in the game, whenever that actually happens. To be quite honest with you, I would advise you and the other raiders teaming up, man. Even outside of that, though, proximity chat is still nice because you can just pick up on enemies that are nearby. Maybe they have an open mic. Hell, I've even had enemies give themselves away in their location because they had open proximity chat. At the same time, though, you can always go back to the classic way of communicating in video games. Bagging. Ah, yes. Holster your weapon, look at the enemy across from you, and drop the classic crouch spam. A sign of peace in all video games. Now, I will say communicating with your own teammates will give you a major leg up, but keep in mind a ping system also exists inside of arc raiders. So at any point, feel free to ping where enemies are, where certain items are at, or even the direction you and your squad should be going in. It's crazy that I even have to sit here and praise no shit features, but this is the world we live in, guys. I'm just happy arc raiders has a ping system and has proximity chat. Now, this takes us to our next tip, and that involves movement. One of the most important skills to learn in arc raiders is stamina management. Running, dodging, rolling, and vaulting all drain your stamina. And the last thing you want is to be out of sprints, essentially making you a sitting duck. Luckily, there are some easy ways to ensure you always keep your stamina bar topped off. Now, like we mentioned previously, there are multiple upgrades that you can purchase in the skill tree to increase your stamina passively, which is very strong early game. Standing still regenerates stamina the fastest though, but even while walking and sliding, your stamina bar recharges. There's also an upgrade in the skill tree that increases stamina gains while walking as well. Now, holstering your weapons allows you to run faster, and you always want to make sure you're below your weight capacity or your movement will be severely hindered. Now, if you do run out of stamina, you can consume an adrenaline shot, which will fully restore and even temporarily increase your stamina regeneration. Now, once you've entered a fight, how you utilize your movement tech will vary drastically depending on your engagements. But when fighting arc, your roll dodge is incredibly useful in dodging those telegraph shots. Certain enemies will first lock onto you with a laser, and then they will fire, which is why those skill tree upgrades now give you those benefits when roll dodging helps tremendously here. Now, one feature you also need to use is the shoulder swap. Arc Raiders is a third-person game. With your camera, it's not centered behind your character. I don't know what the default keybind for this is for everyone else. For me, it was pressing X, and this allowed me to shift my camera from shoulder to shoulder. And this also allows you to peek around corners without exposing yourself completely to enemy fire. Which takes us to our next tip. This one may be a bit obvious, but fellas, use your items. If you have a backpack full of items and die in a situation where you could have just used something to help you escape or win an engagement, then you just wasted everything. Outside of your essential bandages and shield recharges, you've got things like grenades to deal damage, smoke grenades, which are pretty cheap to purchase. There's traps that you can set to catch enemies off guard, barricades that you can place to help defend against incoming attacks. There's zip lines that you can use to reach higher elevations, or even just to move between two locations, binoculars to see and ping targets from further away, and even arc power cells, which you can find from looting arc enemies, which can be used to recharge your shields. Now, I should mention that restoring your health is even more important than restoring your shields, since both shields and health are damaged at the same time. But if your health is near zero and your shield is max, it's actually possible to die. So prioritize your health to be as high as possible first, and then focus on your shield afterwards. Now, last but not least, you need to know how to properly extract. Scattered around each map will be elevators that you and your team can visit. Now, approaching one of these elevators and activating a panel will begin a 45-second countdown timer. Now, once the countdown begins, alarms will sound alerting anyone nearby that the extraction elevator is being summoned. Now, I think it's pretty obvious that you should probably take cover. Watch for any approaching players. Nothing worse than being seconds away from a successful run just to have you and your team get wiped. Now, once the elevator arrives, the doors will open, allowing you to walk inside. And once you're inside, you can activate another panel, which, let me just say, takes painfully long to close the damn doors. Now, I will say this, as long as you are in the elevator, you can extract. Even if you're down, you just need to be alive and inside when the doors close. Now, if you've gotten lucky or rich enough to acquire a Raider hatch key that we mentioned earlier, there's also locations across the map where you can stealthily extract called Raider hatches. As long as you have a key, you can activate one of these hatches and leave without alerting nearby enemies. And yes, these are also designed to be used with your team, but make sure you all enter at the same time, as the hatch only stays open for about 15 seconds. So that's it, guys. Those are our tips for Arc Raiders. We are going to be playing this game pretty much all weekend long over on our Twitch. We're also going to be giving away codes to the game so that when the game releases later this month, if you guys are interested, you can jump right in. Feel free to come by our Twitch stream though, guys. We'll have the squad pulled together and we would love to have you join us. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.